Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl, Aida Rodriguez, and welcome to another episode of Truth Serum. First and foremost, I want to always express gratitude for those of you who show up every week, who share the broadcast, who tell other people about it, who like it, who comment, who engage. I love the fact that we can agree to disagree in a respectful manner, that we operate on a frequency where everyone is allowed at the table and we can have these conversations and discussions from the perspective of those people who look like us, sound like us, walk like us, talk like us. And I'm going to continue to do that because I love us and I won't stop. I am excited to be here today. A lot of things have been happening in the headlines from this point forward. The way we do the show, I will roast the headlines at the top of the show. But this week, I would be remiss if I didn't share these headlines with my guest, because my guest has always had a point of view, always had something to say, always been one of the funniest people in the game that I love, that I've respected, and that I've admired for a very long time. And I had an opportunity to meet her when I went to Vegas to work. And I was just sat through her show and I was just like, man, sexism and comedy is real. We hear a lot of people always promoting the male point of views about being truth tellers and going for it and telling these jokes in a way. But Marsha Warfield will not be denied ever. And she is a guest here today. And when people ask me who are my favorite comedians, I did a TV show the other day and I named 5 people. And I said Marsha Warfield was the only woman on that list. And they said, that's the only woman on that list for you. And I said, no, the list is long. But if you ask me the top 5 people who I think are some of the most brilliant minds of comedy, who can weave funny with point of view, I'm going to always name Marsha Warfield. And it ain't new for me. I've been feeling this way since I started. And one of the greatest compliments I ever got was from Mike Epps, because Mike Epps said to me, you remind me of Marsha Warfield. And that was like one of the greatest compliments I ever had. So welcome, Miss Marsha Warfield. How you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. I don't know if I can follow all that, but I appreciate it. And when I was growing up, my mother always said, when you get a compliment or criticism, consider the source. And considering the source, I am very, very moved. Thank you so much. You are one of my sheroes. I admire you, and I admire the work you do and the stance you take and the strength and the just Ida-ness you bring. So keep on keeping on. We need you.
She made me cry earlier, and now she made me tear up. And I don't even cry like that, but I'm just, I sit here and think, and I tell you, because I like the way Tiffany did what she did with They Ready. She wasn't talking about it. She just did it. One day she called me and she's like, yo, I'm thinking about doing this. And when I do it, I'm coming to get you. And so I will say here right now, I can't tell you how many things I've thought about, like, how am I going to work with Marsha? What am I going to do? And then I saw that you are on a TV show right now. And I was like, they even got her. Like, she's mine.
Well, I'm excited to do that too. 911 has been a great opportunity for me. And one of the things that has been the best about it was, well, just working on the show, but getting to know Aisha Hines. What a talent. I watch her work and I'm sitting there, and it's time for my line and I'm too busy watching her perform to remember what I'm supposed to say. So I get excited. I get excited by seeing what I like to think of as you young people carrying the torch and moving forward and doing it with such confidence and brilliance and just talent. I get that does it for me. I get excited about it.
Well, I want to talk about your journey in comedy. You were also, you've been acting and been doing stand-up, and you were doing a lot of the things that people at a certain period of comedy got cut off from doing. Because when I started doing stand-up, it was like people didn't respect comedians as actors. They would like, they're just comedians. But I would like for you to, in your own words, tell us about your journey and how you started in stand up, and what it was like for you when you started doing this, because I feel like everybody in comedy should know who you are and know about you.
Well, thank you. But, the thing about this business, and I like to tell people that the first rule of show business is that there are no rules. Everybody's journey is different. Even teams and groups and bands, they all come to their moment of recognition, and their career goes separately. So when I started, um, I'm old enough to come from the supper club era, and the coffee house era was what was big when I started in 1974. And comedy clubs were new. The Improv had been doing comedy, but they did comedy and music, and it was in New York, and I was not there. And the Comedy Store had just opened up a couple of years before that, before I got started doing stand up. And so the whole concept of comedy clubs was brand new. And I happened to read about one that was starting in Chicago, and by Tom Dreesen, who had just broken up with his partner, Tim Reed. They were Tim and Tom, and they were just about the only interracial comedy team at that time, and not ever, but they enjoyed a pretty good run, and they were very funny. And Tim had moved to Los Angeles, and so Tom was still in Chicago, and he was starting an open mic night at a restaurant bar called the Pickle Barrel.
Mm.
And they had a write up in the newspaper and said that new people could come, anybody could come and try it, and that they called those new people virgins. So I wrote that I'm a virgin, so please be kind, and said I'm going to go do that. And I told my friend Evelyn Ivory, who's no longer with us, but I told her I was going to do that because I was 20 years old. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was divorced. I was still back living at home with my parents and working, I think at that time at the phone company with my mother. But I didn't see that as a career. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I said, I'm going to give it a shot. But I never went. So about 3-4 months later, she came to my house and said, get dressed. We're going down there. I'm tired of you saying you're going and you never go. Let's go. And I hemmed and hawed, and she finally talked me into it, and we went down to the club. She introduced me to Tom and started speaking like she was my manager. And anyway, she got me on the show. We must have gotten there 2 hours before the show started, and I went on about 20 minutes before they closed the place. But I went on stage, and the comedians who were there responded well. And 3-4 members of the audience who were still there, 2 of whom were awake, and the bartender cleaning up and the guy sweeping the floor, they seemed to enjoy it. So I had a ball. I loved it. I felt like when I came off stage that I had received a calling, like the skies had opened up and a light had come down and angels were singing, oh! And I went home and talked to my mother and told her all night long just how wonderful it was. And from that point on, I was hooked.
Yes, that's how it is. And I think you have to experience it. I mean, and I'm sure people feel like that in the many things that they do. But you have a specific point of view where you speak to the issues that a lot of other people are afraid to speak about. Did you find yourself doing that early on in comedy? Or is it something that you evolved to later?
I think the whole thing evolved. You know, I think I grew up. You know, I was a kid. I was too stupid to know enough to be scared. And there were no rules. Like I said, there weren't any other women. There were few women. There were Judy Tenuta was working around that time, and in Chicago, and very few other women doing stand up. Chicago is big on improv, but pure stand up, there just weren't a lot of us. And the only woman I knew of at that time was Elaine Boozler, who was starting out in New York.
Right.
And so Moms Mabley was still around, but Moms did a different kind of comedy. Moms was a character, and she did the character-driven comedy. Well, I wanted to do monologues. I grew up watching stand-up comedians. I wanted to do stand-up comedy. I didn't want to do a character. I didn't want to do the, my husband, whatever, the Phyllis Diller kind of stuff. And I didn't want to do the Carol Burnett, Lucy kind of stuff. I wanted to do stand-up. So that's what I did. And I just talked about the things that I thought were funny, that made sense to me to say. And being the only woman around, that gave me a bit of material, And so that's just the stuff I talked about. A lot of stuff that I used to talk about, I will never speak of again because I am no longer that person, and I've grown. But I just tried very hard, and still do when I started all over again, to find the me that finds things funny, and just do that. So that's what I do.
You say there are some things you won't talk about on stage ever again. And many of us feel that way because we evolve, because we're stand-up comedians by trade, but we're human beings. And just like everybody else, unfortunately, we evolve publicly. Do you ever think that there are some things that you said before that people could use to try to cancel you today, since that seems to be the thing that they like to do to comedians and actors and stuff?
I don't know. They probably could, but I meant it at the time, and it was different to say at the time, and not, I stand by it at the time.
Right.
I don't stand by it now. For me now, I've grown. I mean, a lot of it was just stupid, making fun of people's names, making fun of ugly babies and things like that. I don't need to do that. I don't find that funny. I don't find it worthy of anybody doing it. It would leave that alone. And so those are the kind of things I'm talking about. The stuff about sex and stuff like that, the stuff that comes from the perspective of a straight woman,
right?
I won't do, because I'm not a straight woman. I wasn't then, just didn't know it, and was evolving into who I am. So I won't do that. But I still, it's still valid for a straight woman. It's just not me anymore. So now I still talk about naughty things, and I still talk about political things, and I still talk about empowering things. But the other stuff, the fluff, the what I call the
Marsha,
welcome to this. I won't do that kind of stuff anymore.
It's funny. I was looking at some old videos of myself when I first started doing stand-up, and there was a video about me talking about ugly babies. And, I was like, whenever somebody gets a hold of these videos, which they don't have to get a hold of them because I'll put them out, like, they're going to try to cancel me for saying this. And I did feel bad about the fact that I spoke people's names, right? Because the joke really wasn't even about that. It was about colorism, but I used celebrities as an example to make these points. And then I think about myself and my journey as a comedian and my evolution. And I think a lot of this cancellation stuff, it really does make you feel like it's so hard to, I was just growing up in comedy, right? And low hanging fruit is kind of part of the journey sometimes when you're starting. Um, so I saw you, I went to see you when you did your residency in Vegas. And then you were talking about a lot of things that were relevant to the journey of, people of color, Black people in this country, the world. And you said you came back. When did you come back?
About 2015, 16,
Mm-hmm.
I started working out again, and I had no illusions. I knew I wasn't going to go back and do the, little ugly baby stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any new stuff. Uh, and I decided for myself that you don't just, jump back into line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, because for whatever reason, life will take you away from the stage sometime, and it'll take you away from what you want to do. And a lot of people try to come back into it from where they left off. Well,
Right.
that time is gone. Those, the people you knew are gone. There's new people. There's new technology. It's just a whole new thing. So I went back to the bars and the open mics, and I started again from scratch. I started building the act from this is what I want to talk about to, well, now these are jokes. And the residency at the LA Comedy Club was part of that. When I finally got that, it gave me a chance to work out 2 times a week, and to stretch and not just do the 5 minutes, where you get 5 minutes on somebody else's show. I got to do 45 minutes to an hour and stretch and develop. And so that really help build the stand up.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it was very poignant and it was very relevant. I think that I was watching you and I was like, about stuff that I don't know about, right? I'm like, she really is up on what's happening right now. Cause I avoid sometimes the social media and the news because it depresses me. And so I had to stay away from it a little bit. But I was like, you're the voice and the champion and the hero that we need, because sometimes men really think, not all men, but a lot of men in comedy really feel like they have the Bible on all things. And there's so many, it's limited to what you can talk about. I can never talk about what it feels like to have a vasectomy or what it's like to, get a prostate examination. And I don't try to talk about those things. So you come about and you hit it, and people that start to see you now, these younger people start falling in love with you, right? Because I look at your tweets and I look at the responses to your tweets, and it just speaks to the truth about comedy, that comedy belongs to those who are willing to stand on the front line and speak on behalf of the people and speak to the things that affect all of the people. How do you feel about that response that you get now? Like when you see, because I was telling you I love your TikToks, right? I don't do TikTok because I'm not good at it. And I'm like, I was watching you and I'm like, oh, maybe I can do something that's more, because I'm not dancing on TikTok, right?
No, no, no.
No.
TikTok, I love TikTok. It's so, the creators on TikTok, in a minute they make movies, they tell stories, they share their lives. And the young people, young and old, but the young people are brave enough to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
which really moves me emotionally. They will put themselves out and tell their truth when it's painful, when it's happy, when it's whatever. They'll show their babies, they'll show their grief, and they're fearless in that. And there's a strength in vulnerability. You can't, you to be strong enough, to be secure enough about yourself that you can put yourself out and say, this hurts.
Right.
World, this is wrong, world. And then turn it around and say, this is so cool. And so I love TikTok for that. But you can make it what you want, they break it down. The TikTok users and viewers break it down to like lesbian TikTok and black TikTok and
Right.
old people TikTok and dancing TikTok, whatever. They have so many different little subgroups that aren't, clearly defined, but the algorithm will send you in those directions if that's where you show a favor, and you can make your own space. And so that's what I did. And when I made the first of the most recent series, which is White People We Need to Talk, it went over well, and it allowed me a way to do something that I don't think people do enough, and that is speak directly to the people you have a problem with. We will talk about things, but rarely do we say, this is what I want to talk about, and talk about that. And so I find that empowering and liberating, and to be able to, instead of just tell you how I feel about what's happening with white supremacy and all that, talk to white people and say, white people, this is what white supremacy is. This is what racism is. This is what I think the problem is, and cut it out. So that's what I do.
So I want to ask you the question that, it always, when people ask me this question, it makes me nervous. But one of the reasons why I don't get so nervous is because some of the people on my list are no longer here. And who are the comedians that inspired you? And along your way, in your journey, who are the comedians that made you feel like this person inspires me? I like what they do. I dig this. This is right for me.
Well, there are so many. When I first, again, like I said, as a little girl, I grew up with TV pretty much.
Okay.
TV wasn't, wasn't that old when I was born. And so I grew up in the era of variety shows and stand-up comedy. There was always stand-up comics. The first comedian I fell in love with, the first stand-up I fell in love with on TV was Flip Wilson.
Nice.
I loved Flip Wilson before he developed Geraldine. And once he developed Geraldine, I wanted to be Geraldine. I had never seen a black woman on television who was so self-confident, who was so assertive, who was so okay with herself. And she wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't complaining about anything. She was just standing up for who she was. And so I loved that character, and I loved Flip's cleverness. He was one of the most clever comedians. He was so good he could get away with puns. Man did puns, just awful puns that were hysterical because of the way he told his stories. And then I heard Craps After Hours. And that was a game changer. Richard Pryor was just, I had never heard a stand-up comedian, a black stand-up comedian who did not code switch. And I mentioned this in another conversation a few days ago. When I started doing stand-up, we did black comedy for white audiences. And what I mean by that is the goal was to be on mainstream TV, or you worked comedy clubs. Comedy clubs were usually in the suburbs. When I traveled the country, I was often the only black person in town. And so those of us who were working that circuit were doing black comedy for white audiences. Richard was doing black comedy for whoever the heck showed up, but mainly for black people. And he spoke in a voice that was familiar to me, but unheard of on television.
Mm.
And that was that blew everything out of the water, changed the whole direction of what was acceptable and how it was acceptable to be presented in front of a mainstream audience.
You know, I people ask me about the people who inspired me. And when I think about comedy, right, I think about you, I think about Richard Pryor, I think about Paul Mooney, I think about George Carlin, I think about a comedian that I learned about later that was in the San Francisco area. I can't remember his name right now because I haven't eaten. But I think about Warren. What's Warren's last name?
Warren Thomas?
Say that again.
Warren Thomas?
No, now Warren comes. I'll tell you in a minute. I remember when in a minute. But I think about those people who are unafraid to go in and talk about the things. Because the thing about comedy for me is that it's its own language, right? We have an opportunity to have a dialogue with the people we have a problem with our own people. But you said something very, very specific to why I gravitate to your voice is when you said Richard Pryor didn't code switch. And so people will always say to me, like, they expect something different when they see me, or if it's a room full of white people. And I'm like, well, we keep talking about white people. Now we got them here. So why would I switch what I'm going to say? This is who I want to say this to. And I envy, like, I want to know what it feels like to have been a part of that during that moment in that time where we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have, social justice people out there fighting for us in that way. There's always been the warriors. But in the comedy world, so specific because it is such a sexist, racist place. What was that like for you being a part of that in that movement? Because you are definitely a part of that.
Well, I didn't set out to be an activist.
Right.
I set out to do stand-up comedy the way I thought it should be done by me, not necessarily the way it should be done. And I'd like to tell a story about how when Whoopi Goldberg started doing stand-up or came across my radar, Shirley Hemphill, when I got to Los Angeles, Shirley Hemphill was doing stand-up. And Shirley then got on What's Happening. And, Shirley was the Black woman. And then when we started hearing about Whoopi in the Bay Area, people started telling me that I should be worried and stuff because there's another Black woman and, there's only room for one at a time. And,
right.
And then they would say, she's doing a lot of stuff like you do and blah, blah, blah. Well, like you said, the technology wasn't there. I didn't get a chance to see her in the Bay Area. I never ran across her. And when she got her one-woman show, I was on the road. So I never got a chance to see that show either. Mm-hmm. We didn't have playback like that. Once the cycle ran, you never knew when HBO was going to run it again. So it just so happened that one night I was off. I was home. I had HBO and it came on and I turned it on. I looked and I'm watching her and I'm like, she's nothing like me. What the heck are people talking about? Mm-hmm. And I'm, then she's good. She's, good at what she's doing. That's amazing. And then maybe 10 minutes in, she takes this street character to Anne Frank's house. And I went, what? What? And she does this whole thing and my jaw dropped. I went, that's freaking brilliant. There is no way on earth I would ever come up with that bit. It's just not me. That is so singularly Whoopi. That is her genius. And right then and there, I'm like, there's room for so many voices because just because we have certain things in common doesn't mean that we're going to come at things the same way. she is amazing and deserves all her credit for being her. She's the greatest whoopee who could ever be. And we are fortunate to have her. But there is no competition just because she's a Black woman.
That's
And
right.
so uh, I just kept on doing what I thought was best for me to do and encourage everybody to, speak your truth, say your things your way. Because nobody can do you. A lot of people can do comedy, but nobody can do Aida but Aida.
That's right. I love that you said that, because that is the fear of a lot of people in this business. And white supremacy works that way, where they delude us into believing there's only room for one of us at the top. And then we start fighting, the crabs in the bucket thing. You have a very unique voice, and your voice goes with you everywhere you go. So you were, I would be, I can't ignore the comments. People keep talking about Night Court because you took your voice with you there, right? Nobody saw you step outside of who you are. And when I tell you that you are one of my inspirations, is also one of the things that calms me and lets me know that it's okay to just be me. Because I went in for a Tillamook cheese commercial audition. I remember the lady asked me to dance, and she had not asked anybody else to dance, because I have friends who audition for it. And I was like, you first. And then I said, show me what you want me to do. And quite honest, I didn't get the audition, and the casting director complained to my agent. But I was like, that's just not something that I would do. And anybody who knows me knows that I wouldn't do that. And I know that about you. And that's why, you're so special to me. So I would love to hear about your journey with Night Court, like how you booked that role, how that happened for you.
Well, it's interesting that you said a lot of things that triggered a lot of things, when I started. And I've always been a stand-up. The acting came about because I got an agent after I won the San Francisco stand-up comedy competition. And I got an agent who started sending me out on stuff. And I had done the Richard Pryor show, but that was still the ensemble comedy. It just never, acting was not a thing for me. But then he started sending me out, and I'm doing these auditions, and people were actually, just like Hollywood Shuffle, they would actually say, could you do it a little blacker?
Yes.
Could you do it? That thing you do. And so we all would play crazy, like, no, could you maybe show me what you mean?
Yes.
And they would do it. And so you'd see, how you, it was the funniest thing in the world. And then you would just mumble your way out of it and leave, because nobody was going to do that. But when I got Night Court, I didn't have to do that. My agent said, well, first of all, Flo Hallop had passed away suddenly, like 3 weeks before they were supposed to come back from hiatus. So they had all the shows already, lined up and everything. And now they had to change everything. And so they didn't know what they were going to do with the role. They were afraid to cast another woman because Flo was the second female bailiff to pass away. Selma Diamond was the original bailiff, and she passed away after the second season. And then Flo passed away after the third. And I had done a pilot with Flo. So I had met her, and she was a hoot. she was fun and funny. And when she laughed with her whole soul, and she would look you in the face. It's rare that you see people who will look you in the face and laugh at you, which was disconcerting, but it was so sweet. Anyway, they said, just go in and talk to the producer. He wants to talk to you. So I go in, and by this time, I'm pretty much done with auditions. I'm a stand-up. I'm starting to work. I'm starting to headline. I'm doing stand-up. I'm fine. So I go in the audition with a sweatsuit on and a pack of cigarettes in my hand. And I go in and meet the producer, Reinhold Wiggy, and he's sitting in his office with it's summertime, so he's got the air conditioning on, but he's got his fireplace going. So I asked him about him. We started talking. It comes out he's from Chicago, and we know some of the same people, and blah blah blah. And he says, "Give me one of them cigarettes." I said, "Okay." He said, "You light up too. If you want to." So we sat and smoked and talked about Chicago. We talked about the show, and he explained that, they had lost 2 beloved cast members, so they didn't know if they wanted to invest emotionally, in another family relationship, because the ensemble cast was a family. And he didn't know what they were going to do, but for the first show, we want to, bring in a bailiff, and we might revolve or whatever. We don't know. I said, okay, well, whatever you decide, let me know. And boom, that was that. I left. I went to Seattle to do some stand-up. And when I got off the plane, they said, call your agent. Why? You got it. I got what? You got Night Court. That was how I got the gig. I called my agent, and he told me to that I would go in when I got back from out of town, and that was the beginning.
That was the beginning. And so you're a stand-up. Now you're on a television show. Does it take you away from stand-up?
No, not ever. I was terrified. Every time I go in front of the camera as an actress, I am terrified. I feel like I'm out of my element. Everybody else knows what they're doing. And I happen to always end up working with people who are like legends. These ain't no poop butt people doing, something in somebody's garage. These are stars. And I'm walking in, and I've got things to do that are important. So I didn't know what I was doing, and I told my agent, I got to take a class, because it was like 2 weeks, I think, that I had. I said, I got to do something. Somebody, do you have a coach? Do you know something? So he told me to take this acting class. And I go in, and they tell me to get a book and to read the first chapter and the preface before I come back for the second class. So I get the book, I open it up, and the first thing on the first page says, the key to acting is to keep it simple. So I closed the book, never went back to the class. And when I got on the set, I told Harry that story. And he said, don't worry, I'm not an actor either. I'm a stand-up too. I worked on the streets. These people, those are the actors. So you and me, we'll just work it out together. And so from that point on, he made it easy, and the cast made it easy. And they not just the cast, the writers, everybody, they made it easy for me. So I grew into the role and grew into being an actress.
How many years were you on that show?
6. I started in the beginning of the 4th season, and went through the end of the show. Show lasted 9 seasons, 8.5 really.
Yes, the fielding.
But I was there for 6.
Arena's showing a clip, but
that's me.
That is you in all of your splendor.
Like in the day.
And it's so funny because, I think about body of work. I always think about what will they say when you're gone, right? Like for me, it's so important to have said something, because you can be popular, you can be famous. Kato Kaelin was famous, right? People can know you and speak your name all day long, and then when you leave the room, they don't remember anything you said. So it's so important for me that when I do this comedy thing, that the comedy is like my boo. Like that's my boo. Everything else is just all right. But I think about you, and I'm like, man, like she goes there, and to you, you're just doing you, right? You're not doing anything out of this world. You're just being your most authentic self. I
Yes,
so
yes.
go ahead.
Honesty, though, it's honesty.
Yes,
Now, the truth is that, like I said, there are no rules.
right.
There are comedians who are very good, very funny, hardworking, talented people who have a totally different approach. There are people who just tell jokes, one joke after another, and I
Yeah.
don't get. There is no, nothing socially conscious about it. Just jokes, and there are people who are deliberately provocative, who are just will just say snot and
Yeah.
booger. It works for them. That's not never been the kind of comedy that I wanted to do. By the same token, I'm not averse to it. I mean, in the middle of
Mhm.
talking about slavery and the founding fathers, I might tell a silly joke about who knows what because that's funny.
Yeah.
That's what's funny to me. And so you to me, stand up is so pure. It's the closest thing to just putting your heart on the stage. Your heart, you will be funny if you were a pharmacist, if you were a teacher, if
Mhm.
you were an astrophysicist, you would still be funny. You were funny before you got into comedy. That's why you got into comedy. So
That's
you're going to be funny. The stuff around it, what makes you, what makes an audience respond, that's the thing that makes you you. That's the thing that makes people want to see you. One of my mentors was a comedian out of Philadelphia named Jimmy Cook. And Jimmy used to tell me, he told me a lot of very valuable stuff. But one of the things he said is never forget that what comes from the heart goes to the heart.
Mm. Mm.
Always come from your heart. And so if you're putting out what's in your heart, people will receive it that way. They might not agree with it, they might not like it, but what comes from your heart will go to the heart. And you are a person who puts an honest, tough love kind of thing out. And people will always respond to that. And that's why people do respond to you. They feel as well as hear where you're coming from, and they see you being who you are and being the same person. You're authentic. And so as long as you're doing that, the funny will be there. Like I said, you could start talking about the encyclopedia, and sooner or later you're going to say something funny because that's who you are.
Mhm.
But that's true about everything about your performance. That's just who you are. So as long as you're doing that, you so far ahead of the game that and you're so singular. Nobody will ever be able to do that. And that's what people will remember when you talk about a legacy. When you talk about a legacy of a Lucy or a Mom's Mabley or whatever, they were singular people. They did that, and you can't compare them.
That's right. So the comedian that I was talking about in San Francisco was Warren Thomas.
That's
That,
what I thought. Warren Thomas.
yeah, Warren Thomas. I wanted to ask you, when you talked about being on the road, what were your favorite markets to perform in? What were the places that you would go to? Like for me in San Francisco, I love Chicago, I love New York. Where do you like to where are the places you really feel like I love doing stand up here?
Oh, I love doing stand up. All of those places. I did a lot of work in the Bay Area. And
Mhm.
like I said, in 1979, 1979, way back then, the stand up comedy competition was about 6 years old then. And I won that year. And then they had a national competition that year. And I won that too. And that's when I got the agent. That's when things started opening up a little more. Even though I have always been pretty much blessed in a lot of ways. I got a lot of help from people like Don Cornelius. I did Soul Train 3 or 4 times when I got to Los Angeles. I got to travel with Teddy Pendergrass and do shows with the OJs and stuff like that. And I got to work on the Richard Pryor show. I got to do a couple of shows that didn't go. I got to do daytime television, the Jim Neighbors show. I did the Mac Davis show. I did Alan King. I got to work with all kinds of people. And I got to meet a lot of people who always treated me like I was a peer, and I always felt like I was a student.
The way I feel about you.
Which, it's strange, but I always felt that, when I'm talking to Richard Pryor, I don't call him Richard, I call him Mr. Pryor, and he's Marsha this and Marsha. I'm like, talking to me. It's side, but I'm trying not to show that. But a lot of people, and to be validated that way by people like Red Fox and Richard Pryor and Sammy Davis and Nancy Wilson, and my eyes are this big in my head and my heart is going like this, and I'm sitting having drinks with them. I used to say all the time that if I had to quit, I got no kick coming. I got no complaints. I cannot complain about a moment of it, no matter good, bad, or indifferent. I've been in the company of some of the biggest names, most legendary people in this country and in the world. So I got no kick coming out. It's all good for me.
Yeah, well, I definitely, when I met you in Vegas, I was like, that was me. I was like, yes, because I had just performed in Hollywood, and that was when Mike Epps saw me, and that was, I had reached this point in comedy where I was like, that's it, I'm done. I'm only showing up as me on stage. I'm tired of taking notes. I don't want any more advice. I don't want to be tamed. I just want to be me. And I had just shed that, and I went on stage, and I remember having this moment where I was just like, Russell Simmons is sitting in the audience, everybody is watching, and I went in. And when I got off stage, Mike Epps was like, yo, you remind me of Marsha Warfield. And I just melted. And then I went to Vegas and I saw you perform. It had all come full circle for me because I believe you got to go as you, because you're going to eventually show up anyway. So why prolong that, right? Yeah. And you are always.
I think you're very funny. And it's funny that, and to think about me through your eyes, I see a comedian. I see a peer. I see a self-confident, self-assured, strong, funny, smart, talented, beautiful woman, handle herself and hold her stage. And I mean, to think that you see me as somebody here when I see here is not only a tribute, but it's an interesting feeling. It's an interesting thing to hear. But you know what? That's it. That's how I feel.
But that's how we do it. But you have to be able to receive your roses, because I can do the things that I do because you paved the way for me. And I believe in that. I believe in respecting our whole village. And so it's not even a thing about age. It's just about you put yourself on the line, and many of us who consider ourselves truth tellers are able to do that because of you and Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor. And look, Jackie Fabulous is on here. She said, I fangirled like a lunatic when I met Miss Warfield. Like, like it means so much, because for us, we see you. We've been seeing you. And as humble as you are and as real as you are, you created a path for people who are not like other comedians. And not that there are people, like you said, there's a spectrum of comedy. Some people are joke tellers, and we need them all, right? Because everybody wasn't sent here to talk about social issues. Sometimes we need the relief and to laugh at your car joke. But there also is a component of comedy of people who would do that dance and who would shuck and jive. And you are not one of those people. And so for someone like me, when I came along as a woman of color, Black women, and all of us were always told, tone that down a little bit, dial it back. Somebody actually said to me, you want to win in comedy? You should dance salsa every time you get on stage. And I was like, nah.
But I actually did do a buck and wing on a night court.
Okay.
But it was in the context of Roz in a diabetic crisis. And so it was done that it was so out of character that they knew something was wrong because Roz was going. So it's not about what you will and what you won't. And it's not even about fangirling. As recently as 2015, Kim Woodley, who is also someone I admire and appreciate and love, was having a tribute show, and it was the first show I got to do coming back, first TV. And I walked into the makeup room, and I see this woman, and I'm looking, and then she held her head up. Now this is what I'm doing behind her, because I finally took it to it's Jane Kennedy. I sat there like this for a while, and then I finally went, excuse me, Miss Kennedy, I hate to bother you, but do you know what you meant to me coming up, seeing you, this beautiful woman, seeing you break down barriers, being a sports commentator and just being who you are, how impactful you were in my life? And she's like, okay, yeah, but we don't always know what impact we have on people, and we don't really do it for that reason. But we want to be, like I said, authentic. We want to be real. We want to be who we are. We don't want to shuck and jive and dance and have to become the Jemima entity. And those people who resisted, who still pushed forward without doing that and set new standards, we all revere them. And they don't always know the impact they have.
That's right. You're one of those people. And when I was at Montreal and I saw you, and you were with Wanda Sykes, and you were telling Wanda about me, and I'm sitting there looking at, like, these are heroes of mine, right? These are the women that I look to when I feel like there's no room for me, right? That's what happens. I look to you because I say, that's what I want to do. That's what I've always wanted to do. Because I'm not going to ever be, I'm just not that animated. I wish I was. And I can blame it on being hypoglycemic, but that ain't my energy. So what is your career? What is it looking like for you now? Because now every time I see you, I get happy. There's the 911. People love you on social media. They want to hear what you have to say. Some people are catching up. Many already knew. We've always known. What does it feel like for you now in this new age of social media and all of this stuff? What does comedy feel like for you right now?
Right now, I'm still learning. Still learning the game, still trying to adapt what I do and to walk the same kind of line you do it. Where's the line between comedian and loudmouth?
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
that I'm just not going to take it anymore. And so I'm loving the journey. One of the worst things I think that can happen is when you get complacent, when you get to a place where there are no more hills to climb, no more, uh, places to go that excite you. And at my age, I think one of the things I have going for me that so many people my age in all walks of life don't have
Mm.
is optimism. I have things to look forward to. I have things to do. I have, hills to climb. So I'm, excited about the journey. And I don't ever want there to be a top, a finish, a goal, The
Mm.
goal is to just keep on learning, growing, doing, and being, just being me.
What is another what's the next milestone for you with regards to comedy? What is something that you'd like to conquer with stand-up comedy? Because you are a purist when it comes to stand-up.
When it comes to stand up, I just like doing the stand up, Concerts and stuff would be cool. I wanted to do a one woman stand up, not necessarily a one woman show. I mean, there are elements of both, but basically just take the stage for however long, a couple of hours, and
Mhm.
do that show. That's something I would love to do. But other than that, I would love to have a sitcom or a television show. I love television. A lot of people love movies, and a lot of people love theaters, but I've always loved TV.
Mm.
And so I would love to have a sitcom television show. That would be a dream come true. If it
Mm.
happens, great though, and if it doesn't, that's cool too. I will, you know, I'm a Pisces, so
Mm.
we're very watery. I tend to go with wherever the flow goes. I try to swim my way through, but if the current is going this way, well, let's go that way and see where it takes us. And so that's how I feel about it. I'm just looking forward to continuing on this journey.
That is it's funny because I ask for my own selfish reasons because I'm always thinking about how do I create something, how do I work with her, because I want everybody to hear this voice. And are you touring right now?
No, I'm COVID averse.
Yes.
I ain't getting COVID. So
Right.
I'm vaxxed. Yay, fully vaxxed. I encourage everybody to take the vax. I understand for people of color, for Black people, for women,
Yeah.
that there can be a level of distrust that is earned and valid as far as medical uh, practices are concerned. However, in this situation, the vaccine pros outweigh the cons. And when you got you got COVID, you got a vaccine. COVID, you got a vaccine. Take the damn vaccine. Okay, I did. I survived. It was unpleasant for about 12 hours. It was kind of achy and, you know, I don't feel good. But then after that, I've been fine. And I'm coming up on Monday, will be the second week where they say now you have full immunity. And I feel much better about being out in the world around people. So I'm looking to start doing more things as things open up, but I won't rush it and I won't my concern has always been to putting people at risk. I will not put people at risk
Mhm.
of being infected, and from me or from each other. I just am have taken the virus seriously, so no. But on like 911, they take full precautions and the testing and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, now that I'm uh, had the vaccine, I feel much better about working around other people and traveling and stuff. And so things should hopefully open up in the next year.
But you have a recurring role on 9/11.
Well, I got another one coming up. I did a second one, and the door is open. There's nothing, you know, uh, there's no contract uh,
Mhm.
signed on to the show or anything. But I think the door is open for future roles, and if so, I'm down for it, and for any other projects that come along that seem to fit me.
Well,
Now I'm old enough to be everybody's mama, so and everybody needs a mama, and
well, the ageism in Hollywood, I'm old enough to be everybody's mama. Like my daughter's old enough to be everybody's mama. They got shows where they'll send a role, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is what we do in Hollywood. So that's why we got to get in these writers' rooms and tell our own stories.
well, yeah, that's always an option. You can always write yours. Scripts. Everybody has a script in Hollywood, so we can always write. And I've written one and got another one in my head, and so I'm ready to go pitch meeting wise. But film, TV, stand up, radio, audio books, I don't care. I mean,
Oh no, you'd be great for the audiobooks. Like you
I'm
have.
available for consideration.
Well, I wanted to bring you here today because I think it's important for us to celebrate our heroes. I had an opportunity to meet Muhammad Ali, and I went to lunch with Muhammad Ali, with the great Muhammad Ali, and it was life changing for me. My children got to sit with him, and we got to talk to him, and it's I will to date one of the greatest days. But I didn't get to meet Bruce Lee. Um, I did not get to meet Richard Pryor, but Paul Mooney I worked with, and then I had an opportunity to see you. And so I just think that I wanted the people who support me and that come to Truth Serum, because we have such a great community, to also know about you and support you if they didn't, which they all are in here loving you. People know you from different places. Like they're like, I loved her on Night Court. I loved her on the Richard Pryor show. I love her stand up. So it's so funny to see that so many people feel the way about you that I feel about you. And I know you're humble, and I know you don't walk around with that energy, but I just think it's important that you know what you mean to us in comedy, because we don't get to tell the people who mean that to us how in the live. And so you are definitely a hero, and you've paved the way for so many young people of color, Black people who have a specific point of view and want to talk about things and do it unapologetically. And I just think that you are everything, and I want you to know that how I feel about you, and I'll say it in public. And I'm not trying to take you from your woman either. I see you on Instagram.
Well, I thank you so much, but I stand on so many shoulders, and if I stand tall, it's because I'm standing so high on so many people's shoulders. Those people whose names we know, and those whose dreams never came to fruition because they just, like you said, they just won't shuck and jive. They just wouldn't do the dance. They just wouldn't say those things. And so we don't know their names,
That's
but
right.
we owe them a debt, because those things not being said are just as important as the things that were said. And
Yes.
so I appreciate the love, but I give it back, and I project into the future that there are young women now who
Yes.
feel the exact same way about you. and you will feel exactly as I do when they tell you.
Yeah, no, you are great. So tell people where they can find you, and don't forget to include your TikTok, because your TikTok is lit.
I am Marsha Warfield .me on everything. Marsha Warfield on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, my website, TikTok. I don't have any handles or anything like that. I'm lucky enough to have my name
Mhm.
on all my stuff. So if you're looking for me on any platform and I'm there as me.
So make sure you follow her and you support everything that she's doing, and flood the 911 Twitter handle with love for her as well, so they can keep bringing her back until I'm done writing this script that I want her to be the star of the show of.
All right then, and I look forward to that. And you keep being you. You make me proud.
Thank you so much. Love you. Thank you for being here. And thank you to all of you who tuned in today, all your amazing comments. So much positivity in the comment stream, because we operate on a different frequency over here, and we keep we uplift the people who look like us, sound like us, talk like us, walk like us, because we are a great people. So thank you so much to everybody who showed up today. This is on record my favorite show of all my shows that I've done on Truth Serum. So have a beautiful weekend and be blessed. And may the saints and the ancestors and the Most High and everyone that is conspiring to keep us alive and well continue to rain blessings on you, because you are worthy of them all.
You see my candles, don't you?
I do see your candles.
All right. There you go.
Yes, that's right.
See, I got my little altar behind me. I know you ain't saying nothing now, you know.
Yeah, my yacht. All right. All right. Love you. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.